Hello and welcome to Teacher Talk, the podcast for teachers who are lifers but still want to have a life. This is Jared, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, Johanna.
Hey, Johanna.
Hi, Jared.
What are we going to talk about today?
Parent-teacher conferences.
What are we going to talk about in parent-teacher conferences?
Well, that's kind of the problem, is like, what do you talk about in parent-teacher conferences?
I don't know.
Generally, there's a couple of general truths about parent-teacher conferences, and it's associated with time. Either you don't have enough time, or you have way too much time. It depends on the age group that you teach.
Which one is the too much time?
I would say in the elementary, you tend to have large chunks of time that can range from 10 to 20 minutes. And then at secondary, you might have 70 to 80 students you need to conference with in, say, 3 hours.
So elementary, too much time, secondary, not enough time?
Right. See, conferences were created before computers because it was a way for teachers to share what was inside the grade book. And so it had a purpose. But now everything is shared electronically as far as grades. And so you kind of have to reinvent what is the purpose of parent-teacher conferences.
So what's the old purpose?
Like grades. Like,
we still had report cards.
Right. No, but when parents showed up, essentially you were giving them a real, like long ago, right?
In the before time.
In the before
long
times.
ago.
Parents showed up and I was sharing the live grade. Parents didn't know if work was late. There was no way to communicate things unless I contacted parents or I wrote a note.
Okay, so we now can communicate details of progress kind of without even trying, right? It just happens.
Right. Like if in the secondary, you as a parent can log in and see how many assignments has your kid turned in late. If they have missing work, you might even have a program that automatically emails the parents once a week and lets them know exactly what's missing. And so all of that was the purpose of parent-teacher conferences, and now we don't need that.
Johnny or Susie were doing their work or not?
Right.
And say, oh, you need to tell them to do their work?
And the quality of work. I mean, now we have apps that allow us to easily share with parents what student work actually looks like and what the expectation or the standard is. And so parent-teacher conferences, it becomes a question of, well, what do I do?
Well, why do we still have them then?
Well, a lot of schools are starting to get rid of them, actually. Okay,
so should they?
I don't think so. I think that there is, and I say this from the perspective of a teacher who, I like to be efficient with my time. And it's not like I enjoy parent-teacher conference week when I work an extra 10 hours in the evening.
Yeah, nobody does, right?
No, yeah, that's true.
I mean, the day off is nice, but it's not worth it?
No, I think that a lot of good can come from parent-teacher conferences.
I'm not saying that, like, it's not, like, net benefit to the universe worth it, but just from, like, your own mercenary perspective of, oh, well, I put in this conference week, but I get that day off before Thanksgiving or whatever.
Oh, so we get that, but not all schools work like that.
Most schools, I think, have some sort, like...
It depends on the state.
No.
It could just be written into the contract that you have to do parent-teacher conferences and the number of hours you have to do them.
Well, in any event, I mean, like, you would have to work some other day. Like, it all adds up to the total amount of hours that you're supposed to work.
I suppose.
So, it's a long week, no matter how you slice it.
It's a long week.
But you think it's still worth doing, even though Johnny and Susie's apps spy on them for their parents now, and there's nothing to talk about?
Well, see, I think there is a lot to talk about. And I think that teachers struggle and end up spending tons of hours preparing for parent-teacher conferences, and that could get avoided. And I also
think... It's got to be kind of stressful, because it's like, I get, like, in corporate land, every once in a while you got to, like, present to the boss or the boss, and that's like, there's a whole bunch of preparation that goes in case you get to ask any questions, and you don't want to look stupid.
Oh,
and so you over prepare for this thing, and in some sense it's a good exercise to, like, order the ducks in your own mind, even if you never get asked about them. But in another sense, it's a lot of work to prepare for something that's really not that important to.
Well, imagine that meeting times however many students you have.
Right. And they're not really your bosses. They're kind of like your boss customers in a way. They're both a boss and a customer.
Yes, a lot. That I would say is inherently the problem, is that parents tend to think that teachers are like Target, and we're like here to serve you, and really we're here.
You're more like Walmart, and you're just there.
No.
Sorry, Walmart.
We're not.
I like Target better than you.
We're not customer service for the parents. We are there to educate a population for the community. And so,
whether they like it or not.
Yes, you have to
way.
go to school whether you like it or not. And
you have a job to do whether they support you or not.
Right.
Like,
we are hired by the community.
Your duty is to the child.
Right. In public school, our duty is to create a child that can be a productive citizen. And that can be hard for parents because parents can be very used to customer service style relationships. And it's very easy for us as teachers to slip into that role of being customer service. And so, yeah, parent-teacher conferences can be extremely overwhelming.
So what do you do then to make them both good for you and worthwhile for everyone?
So I think it's really important to give parent-teacher conferences a purpose, and I like to use the purpose of the future.
Because children are our future?
No, like the student's future. So I like to use the 1/3 to 1/4 rule.
What is the 1/3 to 1/4 rule?
So let's say you're going to have conferences with kids who are approximately 12 years old. Then you're going to take 1/3 to 1/4 their age, so 3 to 4 years, and you're going to add it to their age. And you're going to have the students and the parents reflect on what they want to be so in this case, it would be 15 when they're 15 or 16.
Oh, this is like the creep rule, but like in reverse.
What's the creep rule?
The creep rule is that you shouldn't date someone that's younger than half your age plus 7.
Yeah, okay.
Do the
I
math.
don't know that we should connect parent-teacher conferences and some rule about dating.
Well, we're not. It's just
okay.
Sometimes the way math works out on ages is elegant.
Okay.
And so your 1/3 rule or 1/4 rule is moving forward in a direction, and it works, right?
It does. Well, because like if you're having a conference with a 5-year-old, you really
the future is immediate.
Their future, that when they think really far in the future, they're thinking like a year to year and a half. Versus a 12-year-old can conceptually visualize themselves starting high school, versus a high school student can conceptualize themselves leaving college.
This is why it's like the creep rule, because when you're 80, the difference between you and the person you're dating's age is a lot more spread out than when you're 20, right?
Right.
But
okay.
in the other direction. See, I know it sounds weird, but it works.
Okay. So when I was teaching secondary, this meant that we were discussing, 4 to 5 years in their future. And we're not connecting to the curriculum. We're not saying like envision yourself as, I don't know, pick a curriculum, Jared. Envision your world, your math world in 4 or 5 years. We're talking them visualizing themselves. And
so if I'm in like 8th grade and starting algebra, maybe, what am I, 13, 12?
14 probably.
A third of that would be 4 or so, a quarter to a third. So at that point, I'm thinking about what kind of math I want to have when I'm graduating.
No. You're thinking about who you are when you're graduating high school. Who are you?
How would I know?
Well, that's the whole point. It's to get them to have that conversation, because parents...
But not with respect to math?
No, not yet. So parents and students spend a lot of time talking about the here and now, and almost no time talking about what the kid visualizes themselves as in the future. So if you can just have all your kids visualize themselves in the future, I mean, that's goal setting that you can tap into in the classroom. And the parents can be a tool to help have those one-on-one conversations that you don't have time for. Parent-teacher conferences can be a time when you have time for those conversations. And we're going to talk about what to do when you're secondary and you have like a minute and a half per kid/parent in a second. But using it for long-term goal setting helps to give what you need to tell the parent about the immediate future purpose.
In the corporate world, we call this development planning.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What's that?
I mean, part of your like conferencing with bosses or employees is to talk about like, where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? And like, what experiences or learning do you need to get? It helps to make people positive and focused on things that will cause them to be engaged and productive.
Do you set like 6-month goals or do you set like long-term goals?
Usually over the course of a year.
Okay. Yeah, and this is much more, we want to be much more futuristic than that.
Okay.
Okay. So.
It still doesn't make any sense, but okay.
Okay. So let's
just put the podcast out there.
No. It's going to make sense by the time we're done with this episode.
Okay.
Because we're going to make sure it all fits in one episode.
So when they're 18, you're going to be talking about buying a house, maybe thinking about having kids.
Not necessarily, but I mean, the parents could think that that is the future and the kid could have an entirely different idea.
But how does that affect the conferences for their math class in high school?
Okay, we're getting there. So let's take the 14-year-old and then we're looking ahead approximately 4 to 5 years?
Towards the end of high school.
Right. You know, those questions are, where do you see yourself going after high school? And then that leads into what they do need, which you as the educator know, whatever they say, how that then connects to what they need to learn in your content area. And that is knowledge that the parent doesn't have and desperately appreciates. You know, when I conferenced with kids who were 13 to 16 years old, if they said that they wanted to, be a doctor, then I had an idea about what sort of high school classes they would have to have taken. And then that can connect into my curriculum. And then that can connect into creating actual action steps that they're going to use for the rest of their learning time with me, because it connects to that bigger goal.
So you kind of like an academic advisor?
Yes, it's like academic advising. You're using a kid's want as leverage. So
right. Instead
let's
of
say,
just like you come to class because you have to and you learn what you're told because you're supposed to. It's like tying their actual interest and desires into why it's good to learn this stuff.
If a kid wants to become a mechanic, then you as a teacher can connect into, well, if you're going to want to become a mechanic, then we need to make sure that we graduate high school with high enough grades so that we can go into some sort of programming.
Associate degree or...
Right, which means we're going to need, 3 years of science or 4 years of language arts, which means if we're going to be able to do that as an 8th grader, we need to make sure that we're getting an A or B in the course. Right now we're getting a C in this course. Let's talk about some steps that we can take to get us to that A-B level, which will help connect us to our future goals of wanting to go to school to become a mechanic.
So the conference is an opportunity to talk, because is the kid at the conference then?
I encourage you, even if your school does not, to tell students to come and to have students invite their parents, either whether that be to send their parents a text during class or you actually have the kids write a letter. But I think the invitation to discuss my future should be from the student lens, directed towards the parents.
So
or the trusted adult that takes care of them.
What you're doing is turning it into an opportunity to create buy-in for just really kind of the day-to-day work of classes. Like, I want to do this because...
Right. I mean, I've had kids whose parents, they didn't bring their parent to their parent-teacher conference. They brought their older sibling that was approximately 4 years older than them. But that was the person, the invitation goes to the person that they think is best apt to help them create their future.
Work
the future
to achieve their goals.
Right. We want to talk to that person that will help them stay focused on their goals.
And it makes sense to do this at conference time rather than just like sitting down and talking to the student.
Right. I want another adult to take ownership over this conversation because I can't. I might be in this kid's life another 6 weeks. I need an adult to have an experience that causes them, particularly with 13 or 14-year-olds, it allowed parents to have conversations about how their phone might prevent them from reaching their goals because
Sure.
focused on the future. If you have really young students, if I'm talking to a 5-year-old, we're only talking a year into the future.
But the older you get, the broader the horizon gets.
Correct. And then you're taking that back into action steps that apply in the classroom. So those things you naturally want to share, the things that the student is doing really well, you can connect to how doing that is going to help them reach their goal.
Right.
And the things that students are struggling with, you can connect how getting better at this will help them to reach their goal. And you're always having it about an us conversation. What do you need us to do to help you change the fact you struggle to meet due dates? Right? Always focused. We are a team.
The three sides of you. The teacher, the guardian or whatever, and the student.
Right.
Is us. Is team.
Yes.
So you're reinforcing the team. You're reinforcing the buy-in to the work as something that's not just because they have to.
Right. If the student is struggling with behavior, rather than talk about what they did that day or that week that frustrated you as a teacher, now you're talking about, so you really struggle with follow through or to listen or to do what is asked of you by someone in charge. But your goal of wanting to become a police officer means you're going to have to know how to control those emotions.
So this sounds like it might work really well for like the 10% of kids that actually want something, but like the 90% that are like, I don't know, whatever.
That's not true. I have yet to ask a kid what they see in their future and not have them. And it's easy. Sometimes I think we look too far.
At least 70% of them want to be YouTube stars, I think, at this point, right?
Okay, that's why a 6-year-old shouldn't be talking about what they want to do in high school. A 6-year-old should be talking, a first grader should be visualizing third grade. What does third grader them look like? Right? What is third grader them good at? And talk about things like friends. People want to be good at things. Yes, talk about things like friends. Talk about things like responsibilities that they're going to have as a third grader that they don't have right now as a first grader. I mean, they want...
And by friends, you mean their actual friends, not the 90s television program that is now inexplicably popular with millennials.
You know what? I never got into Friends.
Neither did I.
Oh, really? We're together? Well, I knew you didn't. That's not your thing.
It's a terrible show. I don't know why people like it.
My friends are obsessed with Friends.
I saw a meme the other day of the head of fake survey that said 95% of people prefer Friends to Seinfeld. And then it showed a clip of Elaine and Jerry saying 95% of people are undateable. And it made a lot of sense to me.
Okay, we got to get back on track. One episode. Where did we last leave ourselves? I don't know.
You said third graders talk about Friends.
Oh, right.
We're reinforcing the short horizon of the creep rule.
Okay. Now we have to get down to when you had too much time, this is going to solve that. If you have 20-minute conferences, your goal now is going to be to make sure you do leave a good 10 minutes so that you can discuss current scores and where a student is currently at, because that is important to share, but you're giving kind of purpose to those conversations. So you're having those conversations last rather than first. Like, here's where we are right now as a writer. Here's where we are right now as a reader.
But you do the goal stuff first.
Goal stuff
and
first.
Then now this is in that context of
right.
Here are your goals. Well, here's how it is going.
Right, because if I'm visualizing third grade me, Does third grade me read chapter books? You know, like
Right.
get them thinking about, does third grade me know how to type? Does third grade me know, get them there.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you have too little time, what you're going to do is, generally when I had parents where it was a line of parents, and I am starting and ending a new conference essentially every 2 minutes, what's better is to have a set of questions so that the majority of the conversation happens while the parents are waiting to talk to you. And I call that kind of like a mapped learning progression.
Huh?
So step 1, share with your parent what you visualize yourself being at 16. And then give them additional questions to have them think about.
This is before the conference?
Right, they're probably in line. You can even have kids do this as a writing assignment. So, like, if you're an English teacher, or I've had
Do you
friends
put
of
up
mine
a
who
poster
do
or something?
foreign language. No, it's just like you put out a little basket where they make their line. But you can do this, like people that have taught foreign language have had the kids write letters to their parents before the conference even starts. So
In English?
or with some Spanish or some French
okay.
in it. But you do set up so that the majority of the information where the kid is doing the reflecting and thinking about their future is done before you even talk to them. And so your conversation can be relatively quick.
Because you already put all that stuff that you really wanted it to be about in their mind.
Right. So for example, let's pretend that you are 12, Jared.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 3 to 4 years past that,
Okay. So now you're visualizing yourself in high school.
I'm going to have a IROC Z, and
I don't know what that is.
it's a car.
Oh, because you're getting ready to drive.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna be awesome.
Okay. What kind of classes do you visualize yourself taking?
The classes that I walk into from my IROC Z.
Okay. So do you see yourself being good at school?
If that means good at getting girls, yes, I will be good at school.
I see. No kid answers these questions like you are doing right now.
Well, they don't have the benefit of hindsight that I do. It's what's really important in high school.
Okay. Do you see yourself being involved in sports? Do you see yourself involved in music? Do you see yourself involved in the arts? There's a lot of opportunities in high school to make friends and those social networks. What kind of social network do you see yourself having?
It's hard for me to see anything better than what I actually had. I see myself putting in the minimal amount needed to graduate and then go to a state college while having as much fun as possible.
Okay, so you're telling your parent all this.
Yeah.
The parent now is going to have a lot to, like, you only had to get this conversation started, and now as a parent, what would your response be to 12-year-old Jared?
I would be impressed at how wise he was.
You're impossible.
Maybe I wouldn't want him
No,
to squander
you
his
wouldn't.
potential.
No, you wouldn't. You would be like, well, how are you going to afford that car?
That's okay. Yeah.
You're going to say things like, but you won't be able to get into a state school if you don't put forth effort in high school.
No, because I'll get a degree and my ACTs are good.
In your what?
ACTs. It's a standardized test.
You're going to
They have
get
a
into the
reading-
school based on your ACTs.
Yeah, you have a degree and a certain ACT score, you can get into a Midwest state school.
Yeah, but you have to have the knowledge necessary to get a good score on that test.
Yeah, but I did. I was good. I put too much effort into getting good grades.
So, yes, okay, you have derailed the conversation. But
No, this is an example. We're seeing it live.
no, because no kid talks to their parent like this. I am telling you, they don't. I've done this a lot.
So they pretend like they want to be good in school because they're lying to their parents.
Or they're lying to themselves.
Okay.
Everyone wants to think they're going to be good at something. It's putting in the work that's the hard part. The visualization is the easy part. It's like, I can visualize myself 30 pounds lighter. That's super simple.
Right.
But losing 3 pounds, that's super hard. You want them to have done all that visualization. So now with Loser Jared, who I have been conferencing with as a parent, I'm going to sit down, and I'm assuming that Loser Jared has probably put forth about as much effort in the classroom as he's displayed in his visualization. So now, how easy is it for me as a teacher to have a hard conversation with this parent who just had to deal with their child in pretend land? So when I say...
At the very least, you and the parent will be on the same team?
Correct. So, Jared, what did you visualize?
And then the student...
Jared's not even going to answer. The parent is going to be like, well, his goal is to just have things magically handed to him.
The student gets to feel at least being on the cold end of that team.
Yes.
Right? Because they'd be like, no one wants to be on their own in that type of situation. And so when the parent and the teacher are together and like, well...
I've had some kids and their parents who have been in my line waiting to talk to me, and I know they entered that line very angry. But by visualizing the future and the parent actually talking to their kid about the future, the parent realized what I was seeing in the classroom in a way that they didn't before, because they were never managing the learning style of their child. Right? Like, it's easy for parents to go like, oh, they'll never clean their room, and they come home 20 minutes late, and they don't take care of things at our house, and all they want to do is play video games. But they don't, if they never ask their child to do something hard consistently day after day, like you're doing in the classroom, it can be hard for the parent to understand why what's happening is happening. But by having this conversation with their child, they will definitely have a clearer picture.
The light turns on when you confront it like this.
Right.
Sure. Okay.
You believe me?
Yeah, it's smart.
Yeah. And it gives it, look, you know what's not going to happen? If the parent never holds their kid accountable, they're probably not magically going to start holding their kid accountable other than that first week after this. Most parents want the best for their kids, and most kids want the best for themselves. And by getting them to think about the future, it will cause long-term change, even if it doesn't cause it in your classroom.
So long story short, conferences is no longer really the place where you exchange information about progress. You're turning it into a opportunity for a goal-setting session for the guardian, the student, and the teacher. And it's largely around creating buy-in to the actual day-to-day work of learning.
Correct.
Because you're using the opportunity to talk to the parent or guardian and the student together to make sure that they have a purpose in mind besides because they have to do their learning.
Yes.
And
Because
this
this lady
is the opportunity
is crazy
to build that.
and refuses to let us turn in stuff late. I mean, you're not going to be having those conversations.
Right. And it creates a buy-in from the parents that you care about their future, which is what they care about anyway, the student's future.
It's an important conversation that parents need, or guardians, or whoever is looking out for their future needs to have.
And it helps them be cognizant of like how parenting affects their students' buy-in to their educational future. It helps the student think about why they're learning multiplication tables or calculus or whatever.
A lot of look, if you're in a school where parents don't go to college, then they don't know what their kid needs anyway, right? And you would love to think that this is happening with a guidance counselor or somewhere else. But if every teacher has this type of conversation with parents during parent-teacher conferences, over the years, it will help to create positive change.
And even then, it's not so much about like you're the librarian helping them to find a book on the shelf that says this is how you go to college. It's not as much about finding the information as it is creating buy-in to the process.
Correct.
So
yeah, I agree. You're right.
Thank you. Finally. And then our techniques, while we're thinking about this, we're focused on the future, and one of the techniques is the reverse creep rule.
Okay, I think it needs a different name, but sure.
Where you expand the horizon of the future. The older that they get, the farther ahead in time they can think about what the future means.
Okay.
So a first grader maybe thinks about second or third grade, whereas a middle schooler might be thinking about the end of high school.
A middle schooler is probably thinking about the start of high school. A high schooler started thinking about when they're about 20, whether that be that they're ending some sort of secondary technical school or in college or working.
And then what do you do if you have too much time to talk? Like it's...
that won't be an issue. Now you won't have too much time. This will fill your time.
And then if you don't have enough time, what's your technique?
Is to have a list of questions that parents ask the student before they conference with you. Even if you don't have a line, have them do that before, whether it be that the kid write out the answers in your classroom or it's a discussion you want the parents to have while they're sitting in chairs waiting their turn.
So in conclusion, conferences are our future. Thank you, Johanna.
Thank you, Jared.
Teacher Talk, the podcast for teachers who are lifers but still want to have a life.